Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America, we bring the resource to you. The DU Podcast with your host, Chris Jennings.
Today I've got a return guest, and we have Brooke Richard on. Brooke is the corporate relations manager for Higdon Outdoors, and some of our listeners may remember Brooke came on with us last year, probably about this time, to talk spec hunting. But today we're going to go through a full rundown. We're going to talk decoys, motion decoys. We're going to talk about everything Higdon Outdoors. Brooke, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Always a pleasure.
Hey, Brooke, before we get started on, the real gear-oriented conversation, I really want to let you have an opportunity to just kind of introduce yourself to the audience, where you're from, where you live now, where your hunting background comes from, and what you do for Higdon.
Sure. Well, I'm take a deep breath. I'm originally from Lafayette, Louisiana. Grew up there. Recently moved to Paducah, Kentucky to work for Higdon in 2016. So I've been here in Paducah, Kentucky for about 5 years now. I got involved in really the outdoor industry, if you will, through competition duck calling. I used to compete very proficiently in Main Street duck calling. That's kind of what got me to the table today as far as the shaking hands and kissing babies goes. The established relationships I made through that is what brought me to Paducah through Higdon. I'm a 2016 Team World Live Duck Calling Champion. I work for Higdon Outdoors. I function as the corporate relations manager here. I do everything from customer service, sales, manage our social media accounts, get to talk to good people at DU on a frequent basis, which is pretty cool. And I'm the general manager for power calls. I tune calls, sell calls, and as well as manager for Momarsh, sales and customer service, social media. So really just about anything, depending on what day it is of the week. I've got a bunch of hats. So I'm blessed to be able to dabble in just about every aspect of what we do here at Higdon. Co-host a TV show, Higdon Outdoors Television. There's a lot going on, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
We're excited to have you here on the podcast just because you do have such a wide berth of knowledge here. Like you mentioned, everything from, Main Street to meat calling champion. I think last time I had you on, I was really kind of picking your brain about some spec calling tips. And today I really want to get into, the nuts and bolts of Higdon. And you brought up, how you interact with the Ducks Unlimited folks on a regular basis. And most importantly, our corporate relations team, our corporate partners, our corporate partnership teams have a great relationship with you guys because you guys are, a very important corporate partner of Ducks Unlimited. Can you kind of talk about, or just tell us about how, that relationship started and how it's blossomed and really how it's going?
Of course. Yeah. So Higdon Outdoors being the official waterfowl decoy of Ducks Unlimited and corporate partners is a big deal for us because on our decoys, a percentage of the proceeds of every box of decoys purchased by the end consumer goes to Ducks Unlimited through Higdon Outdoors to help in conservation efforts. So that's a big deal for us because without folks like Ducks Unlimited and conservation groups, we don't get to continue to reap the benefits of the Mother Nature's duck population. So we're happy to give back. It's a great relationship, but from a grassroots level, for what I do and deal with on a daily basis with Ducks Unlimited, it's the relationships, the regional directors, talking to them, seeing what, products work well at their banquets and events. And then also they help us make better products based off of their feedback that they're getting from their event attendees. And then also the corporate side of things with the folks in merchandising and fundraising and DU Magazine and podcast. It's kind of the in the know thing. We're talking about products, we're talking about biology, we're talking about science, we're talking about events, what people care about when it comes to duck hunting. Ducks Unlimited has their hand in the basket, and we're just happy to be a part of that with Ducks Unlimited to further the future of waterfowl hunting. So for us, it's half pleasure, half business. And really, when you mix the two together, they say if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. So the DU relationship for me from the Higdon side, being a corporate partner, managing that relationship with you guys is pleasure. It definitely is. It's really cool. It's things that I love. And we're just happy to be a part of such a strong organization that's doing so much to give back to wetland conservation.
Yeah, and I'm sure, it is all pleasure and fun and a mix of business and pleasure there until you start getting the late night emails from Chris Jennings at DU Magazine asking detailed questions about, a very specific decoy. I think just recently we went back and forth on the Alpha Sleeper full body Canada goose, and that's something that I appreciate, and I appreciate you, being able to, provide product when we need it for the magazine. It's important for our readers, and now we can kind of transition that into the podcast where, we do a lot of product coverage. I handle a lot of that from the editorial side in the print and on digital. But one thing, there's only so much space in a magazine. There's only so much you can really put in there. And what I'd like to do here is kind of really discuss in detail some of these products that we've had in the magazine. We promote. I know you guys are out, like you said, you're out there even at events and working with RDs, talking about products and how to either improve them or how to use them in the best way. But let's just get into the Higdon duck decoys, and we're talking the most recent battleship version that you guys have come out with, and kind of explain how you guys came up with the battleship and then how you have tied these into what you're referring to as power packs and which ones are flocked and foam filled. And there's different variations, but I really want our listeners to kind of get an idea of how you guys approach, hey, we're going to come out with this new decoy and here's the battleship. This is our latest and greatest.
Honestly, the best way to explain that and the static decoy lineup that we have here at Higdon is really a quick story of how I stumbled upon it. I was 16 years old, got asked to go help guide for Gentleman Charles Petty in Northeast Arkansas. Went up there and he had a whole spread of battleships. And if anyone here is familiar with a battleship, it is a oversized duck decoy. It's foam filled. I get out there, sun comes up, and I look at the spread that was already put out for me. And there are these huge duck decoys, and they're bright and dark. And Charles, what is this thing? What is it? Doesn't, it's superficial. It really is. And he explained it to me. And I think this is the best way to explain it is, Brooke, those are battleships. A decoy that ducks can see is more valuable than a decoy that ducks can't. And then when you mix in the factor of a guiding situation, people shoot decoys, they don't sink. So the battleship decoy at Higdon is our staple. And really, all of our other decoy sizes, the standard, the full size, the magnums, have spiraled off the battleship. But it's the Higdon Outdoors static decoy line is big, beautiful, foam-filled decoys that are meant to be seen. We're known for our play on contrast, brighter, lighter colors, and then darker colors, because it's a contrast game. Birds can see them, and then you have a bigger footprint with the larger size decoy. They can be seen from a further distance. And you mix in foam filled with that, and you don't have to worry about shooting your decoys, or more importantly, your friends that swear they didn't do it shooting your decoys. So that's the Higdon Outdoors decoy lineup is big and beautiful and indestructible, just like a battleship.
That's awesome. And some of these battleships, there's different variations that have flocked heads. What are you hearing from people who are getting these flocked heads? Do they like that darker contrast with the flocking, or how important is that to hear the flocked head version of this?
Yeah. So, flocked heads aren't for everybody. Yeah, they look better, but more importantly, when you start talking about scientific data of light reflective value, it's a scale that the government uses for signs on the interstates. There's got to be a contrast there, and when you start talking about light reflective value, it's how much light is reflected off of an object. And flocked heads are flocked because they absorb sunlight, so it looks darker. So a mallard drake's head that's green in the bright sunlight, a darker head. Theoretically, not that I know what birds see or that anybody can really know with any uncertainty of what a bird sees, but a flocked head is more realistic than a painted head. But they're not for everybody, because some people are rough on their gear like I am, and you do have to be careful with flocked heads, because even though our flocked heads are tough, the sun will eventually fade them. They will get dirty and they're harder to clean. But on all of our flocked head decoys in the battleship line, they have replaceable heads. So you can replace them should you not take care of your decoys. But flocked heads just look better. You just have to make sure you're taking good care of them. They'll last 3 or 4 years, even if you're rough on them. But if you're looking for a decoy that you want to last a very long time, painted heads are a little bit more durable, of course, because you don't have to baby them quite as much.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm rough on flocked head decoys. I have that's just my personal issue that I've been trying to improve on, and I even got I've gotten different bags to try and make a conscious effort to be more delicate with my decoys, and that's something that I've had to get past now that I've moved into some different flocked head decoys. So, but I
Sure.
think they look great. Just that, even that, like you said, the darker contrast with that flocking is it really gives you a different look and something that's a little more realistic at times. We kind of talked about the battleship mallard. You guys have a wide variety of species, and anybody can hop on higdondecoys.com and check out the wide variety of different species. But I want to kind of move into a different variation of even just the mallard, your guys' full body mallards, and you guys have 4 or 5 different variety packs of those for people to check out and kind of get into that design of the full body. And there's so many different head poses that you guys, and I like that. I think it's cool to have the variation of head poses rather than just the standard resting head. Kind of get into a little bit about, how you guys go about promoting those as the next best thing, or, something that hunters can look at to really change the look of their spread.
Yeah. So full body decoy, and take this with a grain of salt because I'm only 29 years old. So it's not like I'm, the gray fox that knows everything about the evolution of decoys. But a full body duck is in my opinion, the most realistic variation of a duck decoy. You've got a 3-dimensional aspect. You've got a bigger profile. You've got super realism is what a full body duck offers. And in a setting where you don't have to float a decoy or shallow shore placement, a full body duck just adds that element of realism because it looks like a duck. And then when you start talking about what Higdon's known for, the contrast, bright white mallards, dark hens, flocked heads, all those things, it looks like a duck, but they're made to get attention from birds. So with that being said, a full body is going to give you a bigger impact in your spread, especially when you start talking about the shadows cast off of a full body versus a floater or any other type of decoy. The motion you get, it's super realism, and it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, swims like a duck. It's got to be a duck, right? So how could you go wrong?
Tell me a little bit about the motion stakes that you guys have. You guys have an Apex motion stake that goes with your full bodies and some different variations of that. How do those stakes keep movement in these full body spreads?
Sure. So the Apex motion system is something we integrated into the decoy line last year. Late 2018 is when some of the first ones came out, but it is a stake system that has not a quadrant system, if you will, but it's a trident. So it's got 3 pegs on the top of that stake that allow the decoy to be placed in a way where you're going to get motion. The decoy is never going to spin around on you, but it'll stay within an 70 to 80 degree window there. And that decoy is going to move back and forth and very light wind. That decoy, when it sits on top of that stake, you're going to get great motion. The decoy is going to bob around. It's going to, for lack of a better term, bobble, if you will, head to tail. And then also you're going to get the linear motion left to right, depending on which direction you want the decoys facing or not facing. You can choose that, but it's just another very important aspect of decoys, especially full bodies. Motion is key, and I'm sure we'll get into that here in a little bit. But just like water motion on a duck decoy spread, when you start talking about fields and a dry field situation where full bodies are applicable, having decoys that move will put more ducks on the dinner table. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
That kind of leads me into I'm glancing briefly at so many different variations of goose decoys that you guys offer. And just as kind of a curious, what's your guys' most popular goose decoy? Is it the floaters or is it the full body? What are you seeing people kind of lean towards?
When you talk about goose hunting, and more particularly your Canada goose hunter, full bodies are king there as far as volume goes. This is a multifaceted, double-edged sword question because both are really popular. The Higdon floater goose decoys are popular because a lot of people hunt water. And then on the other hand, your goose hunters want full bodies, of course, for that super realism. So I know without any doubt in my mind that the full body goose is more popular when you look at that category. But I think that's just because more people are hunting geese in a dry field situation or shallow water situation, and they'll reach for a full body for that realistic approach versus a floater. Give them a little edge in the game with a full body. So the number one is Apex full size Canada goose from Higdon. It's our full size. It replicates a full size goose, if you will. It's not a lesser, but it's not your giant Western Canada goose. It's somewhere in between, but it's built for a numbers game. So it's a decoy that can very easily be transported. It's an appropriate size. It's the size of a quote unquote migrator Canada goose. So it's just your go-to. It's about the numbers. It's about the realism. It's got the most detail in the carving of any of our Canada goose decoys. It's the newest Canada goose decoy that Higdon's released, and that's why it's probably the most popular. It's just because it's our best foot forward in that lineup, and it seems to be rocking and rolling. And we've seen a lot of pictures on social media that we get tagged in of some smiles and some heavy straps over them. So that would be the number one there in the goose lineup is the Apex full-size Canada goose.
Very cool. Growing up in Indiana, I did a lot of Canada goose hunting and had garages full of Canada goose decoys. And one of the things that I was a big fan of were the shells. And really, I was probably hunting right before the full body craze really took off. So I think most people were hunting with shells, and you guys offer a couple different variations of shells. But how are people using those to just kind of fill in? I mean, are you getting some feedback from customers who are using the shells as just like, filling in some space?
Yeah, they're great. They're great for adding numbers to your spread. And really shells, in my opinion, are most impactful in a late season situation where you're hunting the edge of a frozen body of water, and you can put those shells in a sleeper pose and just looks really realistic. But shells are a great way for multiple reasons to add more, add a bigger footprint to your decoy setup, just because they're very easy to transport. They're small. They take up a little room in the trailer, the bed of the truck, and you can deploy them and you get from a bird's eye view, you get, a bigger impact there. So you get super realism, and then also they're very economically priced because there's not a base and the other half of the decoy associated with that and cost of manufacturing. So shells are a great way to add numbers to your spread as fillers or another element or dimension to your spread from a bird's eye view at a very low price point and a very easy way to do that. So shells are always going to have a place in a decoy spread for those two reasons. But quite honestly, I mean, you look at a field of Canada geese or specks or snows, especially whenever they're in a relaxed position like you'd want your decoys to be most of the time, so you're not scaring birds away. It's realism. I mean, you'll have birds that land and they're aggressive and they feed and they eat and they walk up to the shore and they take a nap because they're bloated. Shells do a great job of that. So I'm a fan of shells, mainly because it's a great way to add numbers to your spread and adds a whole nother element of realism.
Yeah, and I was a big fan of shells. And a lot of that had to do with, it was pre four-wheeler day too. And in Indiana, most of the farmers don't want you driving a four-wheeler out in the field. And so, we were packing all this stuff in, and many times it was several hundred yards through a peanut buttery cornfield that we're, dragging gear and being able to drag out 6 or 7 dozen shells was much easier on your back than dragging out the full bodies. But no, I mean, that was certainly my go-to. With the popularity of white-fronted geese and the kind of explosion of the hunting of those in several areas, especially in, areas that haven't had them before. Are you guys seeing, your speckle belly decoy numbers just, are they just flying out the door right now?
They are. Yeah. And that's everybody who has listened to our first podcast a year ago or is familiar with me. I live and breathe for specks. I mean, that's what I do. I love it. If I had to pick one thing to hunt the rest of my life, that's exactly what it would be. And I'm happy to tell you that the spec decoy project is what got me my job here at Higdon. I picked up the phone and reached out to Higdon, wanted to help them make a better spec decoy. That was 6 years ago. And I'm happy to see that product line up over double since I've started working here. But it's because the population's increasing. They're showing up. People have them where they haven't had them before. So, the Canada goose migration being a little sidetracked, if you will, and held up in some of the southern states. They're not getting them like they used to. You've got a plethora of goose hunters out there that love goose hunting, that their Canada goose population is not necessarily what it was in the 80s for multiple reasons. So now they've got specs and they want to go chase geese. So they're selling their Canada goose decoys and they're buying spec decoys because they love goose hunting and that's their new goose. So absolutely. Spec numbers as far as decoy sales are through the roof. And I think it's just it's a complete assimilation to the increased population of speckled belly geese in North America.
You and I were talking offline before we got on. You and I are both hunt in Arkansas quite a bit, and that kind of transition into this full-on spec hunting operation, you see a lot of hunters doing that, and really taking advantage of the opportunities that are presented with these large numbers of white fronts that are showing up in Arkansas, and even parts of Missouri, especially, and southeast Missouri. I mean, it's a full-on game. I mean, it's pretty interesting to kind of watch this unfold, and now even Arkansas kind of extended their season. We lost a bird, but extended the season to give us some more days in the field, and it's been pretty good. And I'm sure that there are hunters all over these states that are utilizing your own personal pet project here of the spec decoys from Higdon.
Of course, yeah, and it's a game of numbers, right? Before my time growing up hunting, when I first got my driver's license 15 years ago, all the greater white-fronted goose used to be Katy Prairie in southeast Texas. Then it kind of drug over, and the population increased in South Louisiana, Higdon, Louisiana. And that was more of my time. I caught the back end of it. Then it kind of shifted up towards southeast and northeast Arkansas and into the Boot Heel in Missouri here in the last few years, based off of some of the reports I've seen DU release. And if it's the definition of insanity. I hunted specs growing up in South Louisiana because that's what we had. You kind of got to be a little bit insane if you're in South Louisiana or Southeast Arkansas and you're there duck hunting without any focus on specs, and you've got 0 ducks landing in your duck spread, but you've got 20,000 specs sitting on the farm you're hunting. Why would you not be chasing them?
Oh yeah, and the reality is they make pretty awesome table fare as well. So the reward is definitely worth the effort.
If no one has ever just gone on a spec hunt, book a trip with an outfitter, call a buddy who has a little bit of expertise in that, or just dabble in it, buy yourself a spec call, leave the duck decoys at home, set up on some. It is one of the funnest birds to hunt. It's the closest thing to turkey hunting in the waterfowl world, in my opinion, as you can get. Just the way they interact with a call, the show that they put on, the interaction with the vocalization back and forth with the bird and the hunter, and then also the table fare is pretty hard to beat. Only thing I've had better than speckled-bellied goose is probably sandhill crane, but we don't get a ton of those in Western Kentucky or Arkansas, so I'll stick with the specs for now.
All right, let's we'll move on to a conversation that I've really kind of been looking forward to, and something that I think it's a big topic of conversation with hunters everywhere. And you kind of hinted on it with the full bodies, but we're talking motion, and motion is key in any spread. You know, it adds realism. You know, it's definitely, along with the spinning wing decoy, you know, which you guys have some options there for hunters, but you guys have come out with so many different options, so many variations on this. And I kind of wanted to hint at this because this is really one of my favorite products to use. And it's the pulsator, the XS pulsator that you guys have. And you have variations of it of mallards, pintails, you know, there's even a goose pulsator, but let's talk about that pulsator and how you guys brought that to market and what kind of the plan was, and how people are responding to it.
Yeah. So the pulsator it's become a household name, and here's the deal with the pulsator. It's not that it's the magic trick by any means, but what it does is the magic trick, and that's water motion. Water motion, water motion, water motion. Birds don't get used to it. It's realistic. They finish over it. Ducks will never learn that water motion means danger, in my opinion. And the pulsator does a super great job of being very realistic from 2 foot away or 2,000 foot away to a duck, and then putting motion on the surface of the water, bringing your other decoys to life. It helps you finish birds. It helps you attract birds. It looks more realistic, especially on days where it's not very windy and you can't hide the fact that your decoys aren't swimming around like real duck. The pulsator has just done that for the hunter. And if you've never hunted with the pulsator, you're missing out, because it really will put more ducks in your bag. And realism, that's all it is. You know, Higdon released the pulsator in the early 2000s, and it's been refined to what it is today with the XS pulsator, but it is just a super easy, cost-efficient way to make your decoys look like a duck. And from a bird's eye view, looking through drone footage and seeing multiple decoy spreads with pulsators in them from a distance, it just looks real. And to a duck, especially, you know, whenever they're not so keen to finishing over spinning wings, or, you know, they're getting kind of smart, you've got some stale birds, it is an excellent way to hit that reset button and give those ducks a sense of confidence that your decoy spread is real. And that's what the pulsator's done. You throw it out there, it runs 6 hours, it charges for 3. You put a Texas rig on it, you throw it in the water by your other decoys, and all of a sudden your decoy spread looks like ducks. You can't really go wrong with that. So the pulsator has done a great job of that. There's other products we make in our lineup that do a good job of adding water motion to your spread, but the pulsator is the best combination of realism and then water motion, and then adding a visual motion aspect through water motion, making that water sheen when the sun shines on it because you've got ripples, and throwing water in the air like a hungry mallard duck. If I had to pick one decoy, and I could only take one decoy hunting with me, it would be a pulsator, and I would have a tough time choosing otherwise, just because of my experience with them, and then also the element of realism that it adds to a spread.
Yeah, and that element of realism really jumped out to me last year, and I was hunting at a location that you were very familiar with. I ended up hunting with Kelly Powers at one of his blinds, and we're not going to give away any total secrets of where it is or anything, but I know he's pretty protective of that. But what he did with his decoys, and I found it fascinating, is he had these big clumps of decoys. So basically almost like a wad of decoys in and around the blind with enough obvious, open water for kind of landing areas. But when we pulled up in the morning, he basically just went up to each clump of decoy and dropped in a pulsator. And so when you looked at it, and I didn't really realize what it was when it was dark, but as the sun came up, I started looking, and he had these big clumps, and there's a pulsator in the middle of each one. And the whole spread looked like it was shifting back and forth, just from that pulsator just kind of bouncing up and down, spitting water, and it really added an element of motion that I hadn't seen. Now, granted, that's a pretty big decoy spread, is impressive in size and in motion, but with a big spread like that, it's still important to have that motion. I just felt like it was so convenient for him to kind of pull up, throw the pulsator in, pull up to the next one, throw the pulsator in, and then hop in the blind. Like it was, it was kind of just a set it and forget it type deal, but with just significant amount of motion.
Yeah. And it's kind of that, I spent a lot of time hunting without a pulsator before I was introduced to it. And, 2008, something like that. If you're where the ducks want to be, a lot of times it doesn't really matter, right? But when you're running traffic or you're hunting on days with weather conditions that aren't ideal, for example, no wind or it's cloudy, and you need an element of realism to your spread, the pulsator gives you that. And it's just one less thing to worry about, no matter what the condition is. If you don't leave the house without a pulsator and you have it there, it's one less thing to worry about. Birds are going to finish better. Your decoy spread is going to look more realistic. They are going to finish better. I mean, it's just the pulsator brings your decoy spread to life. And if you go and spend some time looking at ducks, whether it's on a refuge or off the side of the road, anytime a duck or a body of ducks is not moving, look in one direction, and there's no ripples on the water, it's because they're scared and they're not content and something's wrong. And for a duck flying overhead, that doesn't look good. That just screams, yeah, something's up. So if your decoy spread is not moving and there's not an element of realism there and birds aren't finishing, you may ask yourself why. And I can tell you one thing, if you add a pulsator or two to your spread, that's one less thing to worry about. So I don't leave the house without one. And quite honestly, it's just because it's realistic. And if one works, 5 have to be better. We run a lot of pulsators, but it's for that reason. It's bring your decoy spread to life, finish more ducks, period.
Yeah, and another great addition, one that I'm a big fan of, as well as the pulsator, is the XS Crazy Kicker. It's just kind of the feet spin. It's on a timer. It really just kind of flaps water. And this is one that I really like to use in timber. When I'm hunting timber and I need just a little additional motion in there, even combining it with a jerk cord or something, but having that crazy kicker just kind of flap water. And I think you even a couple years back, a year or so ago, had made a comment on an Instagram post that I made because a buddy of mine had one that was not a Higdon brand, and it was sad looking, man. And I knew it, and I'd taken a picture of it, kind of not mocking, but just like, look at this thing, and you're like, dude, I can get you a better one than that. Like there's better options out there.
I'm not here to badmouth anybody, especially our competitors. We're thankful for them, but The Crazy Kicker is lights out. If I had to compare the Crazy Kicker to a pulsator, it's a spinning foot decoy. So the advantages of the Crazy Kicker over something like a pulsator or other products out there is you can run it in an inch of water, versus the pulsator takes 6 inches of water to run. But it doesn't agitate the surface of the water as much. So you're not going to get as big of a water ripple. And what I mean by that is it's not going to move as many decoys placed around it as a pulsator will, but it will throw more water in the air. And it looks like a bigger splash, if you will, from a bird's eye view. So it's throwing more water in the air, not necessarily moving as much water on the surface, creating a ripple, but it is a more superficial, exaggerated version of a feeding duck in a traffic situation. It works great because it can be seen from a further distance than most out there. But man, it'll run for over 10 hours. You can run it in an inch of water. It's pretty hard to beat the Crazy Kicker. It's one of the few decoys outside of the pulsator and the Crazy Kicker. As much as I like to spec hunt, and I find myself combo hunting ducks and specs a lot, you can finish specs over a Crazy Kicker. So to me, that I've done it time and time again, not having to worry about it. That tells me that it's realistic. Not that a spec is smarter than a mallard duck. We won't get into any of that, but if a goose will finish over it, it's probably good enough for a duck, in my opinion. But it's just a great way to add more motion to your spread. And they honestly complement the pulsator. If I had to pick, if I'm running 24 decoys, I'm going to run 24 power pack battleships, 3 black ducks, 3 mallard drakes per 6-pack. And then I'll run 2 pulsators, 2 Crazy Kickers. That would be my ideal spread. The Crazy Kicker is a great supplement for a spinning wing decoy because it throws so much water in the air. When the sun hits it, it looks like a 4-foot wide spinning wing. And then as ducks get closer, you don't have wings, which the Leary mallard duck late season seems to have the dang playbook for what a spinning wing decoy is here recently. So it's a great way to attract ducks, and then you don't have to worry about stale ducks getting used to a spinning wing decoy. So it's a great alternative to a spinning wing, in my opinion. And that's through the vessel of water motion versus spinning wing motion.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And, one thing I kind of want to transition to here is, a lot of people out there may not even be aware that, Higdon Outdoors acquired Momarsh, a very popular brand, throughout the country, but Higdon Outdoors acquired Momarsh a few years back. Kind of talk about, maybe briefly, just touch on the Momarsh, the brand, how you guys have taken over that brand and what, some of the products that you guys have through that Momarsh brand.
Sure. So yeah, Momarsh is a category of its own. Yeah, we make boats and blinds and dog vests and several other items through the Momarsh line. But several years ago, I was talking with Ben and John Higdon, and we were talking about diversifying the Higdon brand and getting into blinds. And I just said, hey, the best ones in the world are Momarsh. We should just buy them instead of trying to play second fiddle to them. It's hard to beat Momarsh, and Momarsh. And I'm so glad we did, because they are the most superior concealment products on the market. And it's a shallow water solution. So, whether you're in a dry field or 3 foot of water, we've got items that will put you where the birds want to be and allow you to hide. So you don't have to worry about not being able to hunt where the birds are. So, the Invisilab is number one for Momarsh. It is the best dog blind ever made for our 4-legged hunting buddies. It keeps your dog out of the water. It keeps them hidden better than anything else out there. And quite frankly, it's just comfortable. So it's very versatile. It's a product that has changed the game as far as concealing a dog and making sure your dog's comfortable because they deserve it. And then the other products, Ira, the founder of Momarsh, has done a great job with coming up with items such as the Invisiman, which is essentially the man version of an Invisilab. You can hunt anywhere under 3 foot of water next to your dog, and it's Invisilab, and hide. and it sounds very simple, but Momarsh as a category is a standalone thing. Ira created a whole lineup of products that are within the same spaces like your layout blinds or your layout boats, but that ground where no one had touched in the middle there of how do I hunt shallow water and hide. That's what Momarsh is. And that's what we've built the brand around. And I'm so happy to have Momarsh here under the Higdon Outdoors roof, because it's a product line that is second to zero. I mean, there's nobody else out there that makes a product that I'd feel confident in using and staying hidden and comfortable as Momarsh. Momarsh is king in my opinion, and I know a lot of our customers feel the same way, so we're thankful for that. But getting it here at Higdon, we're still working closely with Ira and our great team here, our engineering department here at Higdon, and several others in the industry that contribute to the Momarsh's success and continued product lineup. We came out with the VersaVest. It was a solution for the dog vest. I mean, so many years have gone by and there's hundreds of different variations of a waterfowl dog vest, but we felt like no one really solved the problem of ill-fitting dog vest. And we brought the VersaVest to market, and just like proper Momarsh fashion, we wanted to do things different and solve problems and create a better product for the end consumer. And we feel like we've done that for the VersaVest, just a vest that you can tailor fit to your dog without having to cut or glue. It's just going to fit your dog, and it's going to fit it appropriately like a wetsuit. It's not going to be too loose, no gaping holes. I mean, that is a definition of what Momarsh is just make products that people value, that actually work, that solve issues. And we've done that for dogs and humans. And Momarsh is just a juggernaut as far as brand loyalty. And when people see the name Momarsh on something, they know that it's been put through the ringer. The people involved have made sure that it's done right and that it's good for the reason they're purchasing it. So we're happy as heck to have Momarsh as a company within the Higdon umbrella, because as a hunter personally, Momarsh is the only way to go. I've owned them before my time at Higdon, and I still buy them today, even though I work at Higdon, just because it's second to none. It really is.
I'm a pretty big fan, and you're aware. You know, I hunt out of one of the ATX and Visilays pretty regularly in Arkansas. I'm not a huge hunting from the pit kind of guy. I'd prefer to find somewhere that I could use a blind of some kind, and that Invisilay really gives you the option to hunt flooded rice fields and shallow water options very conveniently. And I think people can take a look at all that stuff and see, the Momarsh wide range of products there as well.
That's the whole thought process and how Momarsh became to be is if you want an intimate experience on that hunt, you can go hunt a big permanent blind and nothing's wrong with that. Or you can go hunt a tree line or whatever permanent setup you want. You can shoot ducks at 40 yards and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to go shoot ducks at 10 yards and finish them, you have to be where the birds want to be and you have to stay hidden. And we want you to be comfortable while you do that. And that's what Momarsh is. It's come see what the ducks can't. And it's a shallow water solution. So you can take that, whether it's an ATX Invisilay or Invisiman or Invisilab, you can find ducks you can not have to worry about having to hunt a big permanent blind or being limited to one side of the field. You can go get where those birds want to be and know that you're going to have an intimate experience with the bird you're hunting, and you're going to fool them. And for a lot of hunters, that's what success is. And that's what we offer through the Momarsh is just, you can go be where the birds want to be because they're never going to know you're there because you're going to be able to hide in a manner that allows you to remain comfortable, and you're going to fool more waterfowl.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, it's really designed to be the perfect solution, and with the wide variety of products, it really gives people the option, depending on the habitat and the hunting style that they are looking at, to find the right solution to really get those ducks in close, stay hidden, and like you said, it really becomes a much more intimate hunt when you're putting those ducks at about 5 yards off your feet. It's pretty impressive.
It really is. And we're just getting started. We've got some really, really cool products that we can't talk about today, but I'll drop a little teaser here for all of our listeners. But we've got some really innovative products coming to market next year. We're just getting started. We've got some great stuff coming out, and it's going to offer an even wider variety of hunting possibilities for hunters out there. And I can't wait to share it with everybody.
Very cool. And kind of the last thing I want to touch on here with you is power calls. Fairly new as well to the, Higdon Outdoors umbrella. But kind of give our listeners who may not be familiar with power calls, a kind of a rundown of the full line.
Sure. So power calls, it was a brainchild of Kelly Powers, champion goose caller, world meat duck calling champion. He partnered with Ben and John here at Higdon Outdoors to make power calls. And the goal there was, let's make the best calls in the world. Let's make them out of innovative materials, such as hand layered carbon fiber and medical grade titanium tone boards and guts. And that's what we did. In 2016, we launched Power Calls underneath Higdon umbrella. And we made the most popular designs that are sought after by many out of better materials than were ever offered. So they're more durable. You get better sound reverberation through the modulus of elasticity formula that we went through. A lot of scientific data to make a better game call. And that's what Power Calls is. We've got goose calls, Canada goose calls, snow goose calls, duck calls. We've got teal calls. We've got spec calls. We offer calls in acrylic and carbon fiber titanium and woods. And we've got a molded line, which is, we call it a premium molded line. They're molded polycarbonate acrylic calls that are a very affordable price, $50 to $60, that are premium designs that are still hand tuned by world champions. So every call that leaves this building is tuned by a world champion. Power Calls launched in 2016, and we've got, I think it's, don't quote me on this, I believe it's 6 or 7 world championships in 4 years through Power Calls. So I mean, not that necessarily means you've made it by any means, but the calls being used are calls that are bringing success not only in the field but on the world's biggest calling stages. And we just care about it. We wanted to make premium calls done right, and that's what we've done here at Power Call. So if you're not familiar with Power Calls, go check it out. We've got something for just about everybody, and we've got a bunch of new calls that we're coming out with here soon that are going to fill in some of the gaps where we may not have the appropriate fit for everybody, but we're going to solve that here soon. And we're releasing some new calls, new materials, new designs built for different styles of hunting. So we're ever growing. We got plenty going on over here between Higdon, Momarsh, Power Calls, and we've got a lot of exciting things going on. But we're continuously raising the bar, and Power Calls is doing a great job of that in the waterfowl call market, as well as turkey calls, elk calls, those things as well.
Or just give everyone an idea of where they can find some of these products if people want to go and just check it out. Where can they find them? Not only at your website, but also some of your dealers out there.
Of course, yeah. We've Power Calls, Momarsh, and Higdon are in just about every major sporting goods store in North America, as well as other countries as well. So check with your local dealer. I'd be willing to bet wherever you normally go to buy shotgun shells or decoys, you'll probably find our stuff in there. If not, they can get it. Just have them call me. But you can go to our website, HigdonOutdoors.com. You can look at our dealer map, find a local dealer near you. There's probably one within arm's reach of you. And if not, you can find the products on HigdonOutdoors.com, Momarsh.com, or Power-Calls.com. Or you can pick up the latest DU magazine. You'll probably see a bunch of products in there as well. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to check out the website, email us, call us here at the office. We're happy to help anybody and answer questions for them at any time.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you joining me today. This has been fantastic. It's a great insight into everything Higdon Outdoors, Momarsh, Power Calls, really exciting products and some great stuff for hunters out there to find.
Absolutely, Chris. It's always a pleasure. And thank you and all of our listeners for everything that they do for the ducks and their contributions and efforts that we're putting forward right now are going to sustain the great sport we love, the passion that we love for down the road for the next generation. So as always, it's a pleasure, and I can't thank you enough for everything you and Ducks Unlimited do for us in the community of waterfowl hunters.
I'd like to thank my guest, Brooke Richard from Higdon Outdoors, for joining us today and running through the full line of Higdon Outdoors products. I'd like to thank our producer, Clay Baird, for doing a fantastic job of getting the podcast out to you. And I'd like to thank you, the listener, for joining us today and supporting wetlands conservation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.